Tennessee Wraith Chasers. We travel America exploring the country's most haunted towns.
Oh, Alice!
Dude, this is moving right behind you.
Investigating paranormal stories that have spooked locals for generations.
What do you mean, yank?
We combine historical research with modern science and some good old-fashioned Southern know-how to find the truth at the heart of the legend.
Fire! Homicide! Satan?
Just a bunch of good old boys having a little fun chasing ghosts around America. This is Haunted Towns.
This is Paranormal Skeptic Academy, using critical thinking and scientific evidence to analyze your favorite ghost hunting shows. You'll never view them the same again. You have been warned. The Tennessee Wraith Chasers investigate the legendary Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, site of the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. While making contact with the restless souls of fallen American soldiers, do they get more than they're bargained for? Find out this and more in this episode of Paranormal Skeptic Academy.
Tonight we travel to Pennsylvania, site of the bloodiest battle of the American Civil War, Gettysburg.
Homicide!
In just 3 days, over 51,000 soldiers died on both sides of the war, and their restless souls continue to haunt this small town. We'll make contact with some of these phantom soldiers.
Whoa, oh my god, this stool just moved.
Those caught in the crossfire, and even someone we never expected to find.
Satan.
Having ran out of asylums to investigate, the TWC borrowed a page out of the Nick Groff playbook and they started investigating haunted towns. In their new show, Haunted Towns. They travel around the country and investigate, you guessed it, haunted towns. But they don't just focus on the haunted tourist traps, they go to the real people, the off-the-map places, and try their luck at capturing evidence of the paranormal. In this series opener, they travel to Gettysburg, a favorite destination for ghost hunters. Having already watched this episode, I found a running theme throughout. The TWC wants you to believe that they're conducting scientific experiments. They are trying to study what causes paranormal experiences. You will see this throughout the episode. They use the same debunked equipment such as EMF meters, thermal cameras, and digital voice recorders, all under the guise of science. However, there is one theme that is head and shoulders above them all: trigger objects. This is the new thing in ghost hunting. Trigger objects have been used in the past, but this show is the first to actually use them as a driving force for their investigation. They try to conduct experiments like saying, we fired this Civil War gun and got an unintelligible sound, so therefore the gun caused the unintelligible sound. I'll point it out when it happens, but just be aware of it. Now, without further delay, let's get into this episode of Paranormal Skeptic Academy, Gettysburg. The boys head off to Gettysburg, where they say it's one of the most haunted towns in the country. Union and treasonous Confederate troops squared off in America's bloodiest battle, with thousands of dead and wounded soldiers from both sides littering the battlefield. Their tortured souls trapped forever, haunting this small town for over 100 years. They arrive at the Para Cafe in downtown Gettysburg to discuss their upcoming investigation. The team has always wanted to come here, one of America's most haunted towns. We're told almost 51,000 American lives were lost during this battle. We're reminded that it wasn't just the soldiers that suffered, but also the 2,400 civilians that lived in the town at the time. Resources taken from them to support the over 160,000 soldiers. Most ghost hunts revolve around the battlefield, but TWC wants to do things a little differently. They want to investigate some of the buildings that were used as makeshift hospitals during the battle. They also want to check out Stewart Farms, the road the traitors took after their defeat. We get our first mention of trigger objects. The boys are going to use military memorabilia to trigger paranormal activity, and they're going to start at the Mason-Dixon Militaria. They're hoping with a building full of trigger objects, they'll get some type of paranormal activity. They finish their drinks and head to the Militaria to meet up with Tony, and they want Tony to recommend some trigger objects for their investigation. They center in on a dress that may have the blood of a wounded Civil War era soldier. They also find a Union rifle that can also serve as a trigger object. So, they ask the obvious question.
Can we shoot it?
I think we can work that out. You like things that go boom in this town, you know?
I mean, the reason being, sometimes we'll like to use audio triggers as well. Like fire a gun or use some kind of sound to give these spirits something that they were familiar with back in their time.
Speaking, you got all this stuff in here. I mean, do you have anything that goes on in this place?
We have quite a bit of activity. In fact, I have one of my employees here that actually has a couple of experience, if you don't mind talking to him.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Sure.
So you've had interaction here or seen stuff
Oh,
here?
yes. I've been touched on the back. I've heard footsteps, conversations in the back, but there's nobody there. We actually had a woman in period dress come out into the shop, mostly see-through, and then boom, she was gone.
Wow. Sounds right up our alley. So this building was here during the war?
Yes.
Oh, yes. This was a Civil War hospital during the battle.
Really?
In fact, there's actually a cannonball in the side of the building.
Do you mind taking me out there to take a look at it?
Would love to.
These guys can sit in here and talk about the ghosts that haunt this building with you.
I want to see that. Okay,
Let's do it.
We get down to the meat of it all, the trigger objects. Here's how it works, and forgive me if I don't fully grasp this complicated subject. Objects or sounds can trigger paranormal activity. That's it. The obvious question is, how? Well, according to these paranormal investigators, they've set out objects in the past, and after doing so, they've had paranormal experiences. Never mind the fact that we don't have a clear understanding of what the paranormal is, how do we know that said object triggered that experience? It's really simple. In their world, the paranormal is real. So when they put out an object and experience a paranormal event, no questions asked. That object triggered that paranormal event. Now they have a test they can run over and over and again and get the same results, while not actually proving a causational link. That's it. That's how all this paranormal stuff works. They head outside to see the cannonball lodged into the side of the building, which admittedly is pretty cool. They point out the house that Lincoln stayed in when he gave the Gettysburg Address, and we're told the main road was used as a retreat line for the treasonous Confederates. Back inside, Tony, who's an employee, has seen several apparitions. Tells us that he has seen a woman in a dress walk across the main floor of the shop. Time to use one of the most useless devices in the paranormal game today, the EMF meter, specifically the K2.
So we're going a little high right here, so if you're having activity right here, let's see how far this goes. Look at that. Conveniently in the stream of where things are being seen. You get up here, it starts dissipating, so it's really kind of low to the ground.
There's something down there. You guys got a basement, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
So Kenny, I know that you did a write-up on the K2 meter for Skeptical Inquiry, and I read through it, and it was thoroughly researched and expertly written, and your experiments were spot on as always. But for the listener who doesn't quite understand what the K2 is and why ghost hunters rely on it so heavily, can you kind of give a background on why this particular meter is focused so heavily upon by these ghost hunters?
I think the main thing is that it blinks. You know, ghost hunters, I mean, in general, and this is definitely a stereotype, but ghost hunters love blinky lights. They love noises. And if you can get a device with either one or both, that's beautiful. They love it. But with the K2 meter, that was introduced by on an episode of Ghost Hunters, and they had a alleged psychic on the show who brought it to them and showed them how to use it, and from there it just took off. I mean, ever since that episode, and I think it was in one of the early, like season 1, or season 2, I think. I don't know. I don't really keep track of that kind of stuff. But when that came onto the show, it just boomed, and ghost hunters loved it. And every ghost hunter, it became the standard equipment for their toolkit. You had to have a K2 meter. I have one, but I actually got this off a friend of mine who gave it to me to play with. But I think the allure is that these are sensitive devices. They're very sensitive to electromagnetic fields. So if you have, like when I was at a conference and I was actually able to talk to the guy that Chris Fleming, he was the guy that promoted this first. When I got to talk to him, he was showing it to me and he had it on, and in the conference hall you heard the air conditioning system kick on and this thing spiked. And I was like, wow, that's really sensitive that it's picking up the air conditioning going on in this conference hall. We're not even near it. So that told me right away that this is a bad device. Because, I mean, shit, you're in this one conference hall, you don't know where the power source is, and all of a sudden you got a spike. And luckily we heard it as it went on. And that's the only indication that of what the source was. So I think that's the draw, because, I mean, as we've seen, ghost hunters love these kind of devices. They love when stuff goes off. They love getting these false positives that they can spin into some kind of evidence. Their definition of evidence, not our definition of evidence. But it basically, I mean, if you want to get into how it works, it's basically an EMF.
Yeah, explain it, because they use it, as you said, to get false positives, essentially, right? Because any blip or any movement is evidence, considering what they're looking for, and it's so heavily used. And I know they're using them wrong. So yeah, explain how they work, and if you know how they're supposed to be used in a real scientific setting.
Well, this in a real scientific setting, and again, I want to stress that I am not a scientist. So I'm a science enthusiast. So I go off of scientists that I do consult with. But from my perspective, this would not be used in a scientific setting because it's not accurate. It's not. You don't get pinpoint readings. You get a general range. When you turn this meter on and it blinks like that, you're getting a range of the strength of the magnetic field that it's picking up. So, for instance, I mean, the first light can be anywhere from 0 to 1.5 milligauss. You don't know if it's 1 or 0.5 or 1.5. And that's the way it goes all the way up the scale until 20 plus milligauss. So it's for me, in my perspective, it's useless if you're talking about scientific investigation. The idea is that when you have any kind of power source, an electromagnetic field is an electric field and a magnetic field that come together. An electric field is there when power is running, is in the core. Like if you have a lamp plugged into an outlet, but not on, you have an electric field. Okay, there's electricity there, but it's not on, it's not flowing. And these meters can pick up an electric field. Electric fields are blocked by like household materials. So if you have a wire that's not running power outside of like this wall next to me, I can't pick it up from here. But once you get the flow of electricity going, when you get electrons flowing through that wire and you have electricity, now it creates a magnetic field, which this also reads. And the magnetic field can go through walls. So it can go through all these household materials. And it's strong, especially at the source. And as you go away from the source, it diminishes like really fast. But these meters read this magnetic field, the electromagnetic field that's being produced. And they're calibrated for household current. So either 60 hertz for here or 50 hertz like in the UK. That's what they're calibrated for, which is that's a buzzword for us because you never hear that shit in ghost hunting circles. You never hear about calibration. But it's calibrated for those frequencies there. So if you're getting a reading, it's accurate, and I think the K2 is accurate within plus or minus 5%, as long as you're reading those specific frequencies. The problem is you don't know if you're reading those frequencies. You don't know if you're getting other frequencies. And if you're getting other frequencies, it certainly is going to pick up the magnetic field, but it's not going to be an accurate reading. And not even within the 5%. It's going to be all over the scale. So, I mean, you could have like a reading of 5 milligauss, but depending on the frequency that you're reading, it could be 0 or it could be like 50 milligauss. You don't know. These are also single axis meters, which means that it's only reading one axis at a time. So if you're holding it like this and walking around a room, it's only reading one axis. You really have to spin it to get the full axis, but it's not reading the other two. So we have one axis here, like this. You have one axis like this, spinning around. And then, instead of going this way, you have to spin it this way. So you get all 3 axes. And that's a concept that's a little confusing, I think, to people that are using these devices. Instead of just pointing it around, you actually have to rotate it on all 3 axes in order to get the most accurate reading of the magnetic field.
Yeah, because I was watching a episode of Destination Truth with Josh Gates, and they were going to King Tut's tomb, and he said something that was, what you would think you would do, right? He said we did a baseline reading with our EMF detectors, and that way we knew what was present before we went in there with all our equipment. And then they went in with their equipment, and they found some EMF spikes around the sarcophagus of King Tut. And I started looking into it a little bit, and from what I can tell, they probably did a baseline reading like an hour before they went in, right? And from what I can tell, you need to do 24 to 48 hours of just multiple spots within that area to get a solid baseline. Because over that time period, you will see the spikes and you will see what actually is the baseline, as opposed to walking in before you go in and say, okay, we did a baseline sweep and now we're good to go.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly the point. And 24 to 48 hours is like the bare minimum. That's when you have like no budget in your science research and you're doing it that way. Because you can't just go in and sweep a room. That's what it's called. Sweep a room and do an entire room in, I don't know, like a minute, and then come out and expect, all right, now we have our base readings. That's our control, and we're going to base everything off of that control. That's bullshit. That's complete and total bullshit. Because yes, you need to be there in every spot. Like I wouldn't even use these. These are just useless. You would need something like, a tri-field meter, which reads all 3 axes at the same time continually without you touching it. But you need several of them in every room and run them for 24, 48 hours, a week, a month, depending on the location, to get an accurate reading of everything that happens. Because you don't know what's going on in that area all hours of the night, throughout the day, during the week, on the weekends, whatever. And with that show, with Destination America, that show, you have camera people, you have microphone people, and who knows who else is in there, all with electronic devices that are going to affect this. I've had a two-way radio from 25 feet away. I've been able to make this light up. Easy. Especially indoors. Oh my. I mean, outdoors it's a little harder because you have nothing reflecting and bouncing the signal. But when you're inside, like a room, a house, a hallway, especially stuff like with stone hallways and stuff, you're going to have some rebounding. So you're going to have the signals more focused, and you can go for longer distances. So I found, like, testing other devices in the same manner, like the REM pod also goes off of EMF. You can, I in the house, I was 35 plus feet away, no problem. Outside, I had to be about 20 feet from it, and any further, I couldn't get it to work. But these are the things that you have to look out for, because you're getting false positives all over. You get a 30-second frickin' reading in one room, and you expect to base the entire weekend of readings off of that 30 seconds. That's not science, not even close. And it's just bad methodology. It's poor methodology at best.
So we're thinking that if we had to give advice to these ghost hunters, first of all, read a damn science textbook. Second of all, do a little bit of research and then also plan your investigation using the scientific method. So like you said, do a baseline sweep or a baseline read for a week, Monday through Sunday. And that way, at least you have a broad data set to compare your spikes against. Because if you do a baseline reading for a week and you notice that 1 a.m. on a Thursday, you get a spike, and then you go in the next Thursday and you get a spike on your little K2, you can correlate the two. Say, okay, we got a spike at a baseline, so it's not necessarily paranormal.
Right. And document everything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing. Some of the groups, a lot of the groups that I talk to, when I talk about where's your data and can I see the data, they don't have any. They have audio recordings, they have video recordings, they have pictures, and then they write out their report. But that's it. There's no data. I want to see the list of times throughout the entire day, throughout the week, and all the readings, for every minute, every 5 minutes, whatever that they're going to do. But there is none. They don't keep data logs like that, which is, again, poor methodology. And it just leaves it open to false positives because, like you said, you could have a spike, and instead of comparing it to the week before where you were in control, you could just see that spike and say, well, look, we got a spike that night. And then it's a game of association, and confirmation bias, because it's like, well, that must be when the ghost comes out, Thursday night. But
well, there you have it, folks. You have the expert on K2 meters.
Kenny
Biddle.
I am not an expert on K2 meters.
He knows a lot about them.
I know a lot about them. Yeah, that's it. That's much better.
Well, all right, Kenny. Well, I appreciate you joining me for this brief segment. Now we're going to go back to the show in this haunted town. The boys head down into the basement where Tony is said to have seen apparitions. They look around and find some period objects like a wickered viewing casket, a Civil War bed frame, and a child's embalming table. We're told this space was used as a field hospital where soldiers were coming in off the streets to get treated. Maybe some of that energy has attached itself to these objects. This is the perfect spot to start their investigation. The sun lowers in the sky, the shop is closed for the day, and the investigation begins. Upstairs, the dress with the blood will be used as a trigger object, but downstairs, as they descend the steps to get their equipment in place, they hear movement off into the distant, dark basement. The noise just happens to come from the same corner as the trigger objects already mentioned, but they want to kick things up a notch. They're dressing Brandon in a Union Civil War era uniform. Where will he set up shop? The viewing casket. They have their trigger objects in place, so they cut the lights and start walking around in the dark with their fancy equipment to measure the presence of the paranormal. We start with Brandon inside the casket, asking if any wounded or dead Union or traitor Confederate soldiers are present. Before we get a response, we cut upstairs to do an EVP session.
What do you say we start out up here where they see the little apparition over here?
Yeah.
Maybe do an EVP session?
That'll work.
We'll just go ahead and... Look, if you want to talk to us into this black box right here. Call it the Spooky Dictionary. That way you can go into it and find whatever word you want to say to us. Can you tell us your name?
Were you a soldier? Or were you a civilian?
There was a big battle that was here.
Whoa.
Maybe you were part of that battle. Were you injured? Were you shot? All right, see what it says.
Were you injured? Were you shot?
Yes.
You shot?
Yes. Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
Did you have a limb that was amputated?
Mike.
What?
Mike. Trying to clarify if your name is Mike or if you're referring to our Mike. And if you're referring to our Mike, can you give us the word van?
Closet.
What? You want us to go in the closet?
Is that closet where you go and hide sometimes?
Is this where you like to be?
Can you let us know if you're here with us?
Whoa, oh my God, dude.
What?
This stool just moved.
Brave?
Brave van?
Did it say van?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Really?
It says van?
Yeah.
Porter, what did you ask it earlier?
I said, can you say van if you're talking about Mike?
You just said van, V-A-N.
Oh my God. Chris the Mike.
Go ahead.
This Savula said your name. Then Porter asked it if it's talking about you to say van, and it said van. So something out there likes you.
It's probably the lady ghost.
Of course it is.
Of course.
This piece of equipment is the biggest crock ever sold to these gullible jabronis. I'm just mad I didn't invent it first. There is zero, absolutely no scientific evidence for that stupid little box. It's the dumbest thing on these shows. What's it supposed to be doing? How do we know it's doing it right? Why are they even using it? They're just so desperate for any evidence of the paranormal that they use these stupid pieces of equipment to get that evidence. Then they do a word association goose chase and somehow get Mike, Brave, and Van, and it all confirms their paranormal experience. This is dumb. This is so freaking stupid. Brandon is patiently waiting for something to happen in the basement. He radios his team upstairs to tell them to tell the spirits to go downstairs. He still doesn't get anything, so we go back upstairs as the boys are placing trigger objects for our spirit to name. They place down a Civil War era revolver, and the stupid word association device says arms, which is another name for gun, but if the spirit is smart enough to say Mike and Van, why can't it say revolver or gun? Moving on, they want to use the next trigger object, the blood-stained dress. They're doing an EVP session, asking who the dress belongs to, if it's their blood on the dress or that of a soldier, and other nonsense questions. And now, let's go to the audio playback.
Is that your dress? Is that your blood on the dress? Can you tell us the name of the person who wore the dress?
What?
Did I just say what I think?
Try it again.
Can you tell us the name of the person who wore the dress?
Whoa.
That's exactly
That's
what
exactly
it said.
what it said.
Wow.
F you.
Yes, it did.
Boogity.
It just said F you. Like growly F you.
Boogity.
Dude.
That wasn't exactly the reaction we were expecting. I mean, that wasn't a common term used during the Civil War. So we're not sure if it's reacting to the dress, but it's definitely not happy that we're here.
You? You? Really? You? Are we sure you didn't channel my thoughts into this episode somehow? We really can't know what it said or sounded like what it said because of the bleep, but I'm willing to bet it didn't say you. But when it comes down to it, I can get behind that ghost and say you too. The explicit phrase may not have been from the owner of the Civil War dress. We're reminded the militaria has trigger objects from all of America's wars, so it could be any soldier from any era saying you. Feeling their area of the shop is too contaminated, they head down into the basement to meet up with Brendan, who's been chilling in the casket this whole time because ghost energy can't move through floors. We're also told that sounds can be used as trigger objects as well, so they decide to play Civil War era battle sounds, hoping to trigger the PTSD of a ghost Civil War soldier.
This is a Civil War battlefield sound.
What? K2.
Whoa.
What's in your hand?
Flashlight's coming on in my hand and I'm not even
really?
doing it. Yeah.
Holy
K2 is
cow.
going crazy
Whoa.
in here.
When you left battle, did you come down through here?
I would like to try to get a clear answer from you. Are you a Union soldier?
Whoa. Whoa, look at that. Look at that. 36.
What?
Back up.
Look, 15.4.
Whoa. What's going on?
Hey, Brandon, you get my jacket.
I think no.
Were you not just pulling on my jacket?
Where'd you feel that?
Right here.
I don't think.
Really?
That goddamn K2 and that goddamn flashlight gimmick. Do they think we're dumb? Based on some of the YouTube comments on my channel, yes. Viewers are that dumb. We once again get hit with a whole lot of nonsense. Nothing they have done has convinced me of the paranormal, and I see right through their gimmicks that they try to use to give false positive. Nice try, fellas, but I'm onto your games. After that intense K2 and flashlight encounter, they go back to the voice box gimmick, then someone or something is touching one of the guys. We're told the battle sound spiked paranormal activity, and to really cement this evidence, they do an EVP session.
Who was the leader that stayed in the building across the way that addressed the country at the end of the war?
Let's check and see if we got an answer real quick. Abraham Lincoln. I told you. Dude.
Okay.
Dude, I've got chills right now.
That's awesome.
That's sweat running off my head right now. I mean, super intelligent. I mean, because we've not even mentioned the full name, Abraham Lincoln. I've said Lincoln once, but not Abraham Lincoln. And it's there.
Okay, this is getting bad. Even after knowing what they were going to say, what it sounded like, I still didn't hear it. Usually you can kind of sort of hear what they might mistake for words, but that was just a garbled mess of nonsense. They are overjoyed with their evidence. They head outside to meet up with Mike in the van and they go over all the evidence they collected. They have the "fuck you," the Lincoln noise, the Mike van nonsense, and I'm sure I'm missing some others. Convinced their triggering has worked, they leave for the night and head to their next location in the morning. We learn that combining physical trigger objects with audio trigger sounds increases the chance of stupidity, or as they put it, paranormal experiences. They arrive at Stewart Farms, which was the site of the pathetic Confederate withdrawal. They are also having a Civil War reenactment going on that very morning. The boys want to get some history from the owners of the property as well as some background on what soldier life was like from reenactors. We're told 2 bodies were buried on the farm. We're also told one of the children of the owners would see bodies around him at night, looking down on him. At first, the mother thought it was just a weird story until she found out her house was used as a field hospital, and sometimes in field hospitals, people stood over other people, looking down on them, and thus confirming her son's experience. But wait, that's not all. Her grandson always had a run-in with a man he called a blue monster, a man in a blue suit and a cape, which can only mean one thing. You guessed it. A Union soldier. Meanwhile, outside, we meet up with their reenactors because they want to get first-hand experience of the conditions faced by Confederate soldiers. We find out the soldiers were left to die on the side of the road and that bodies were stacked on wagons as the traders retreated. Bodies are still being found to this day on this farm. Night falls and it's trigger object time. Hats and guns, both visual and audio. We should get rock-solid evidence that this trigger object hypothesis works because they're in a clean environment. They say their little prayer, spoiler, their prayer may not have worked, and gear up. Porter is outside with a musket and the rest are going inside the house to look for the blue monster. They hear a noise upstairs and go up to investigate. They're in a bedroom and hear a noise by an end table, so they tell Porter to get the musket ready as they have movement upstairs.
Spirits are already active, but we're going to try to kick it up another notch. We got Porter outside. He's about to fire off a blank from a musket, which is a huge trigger.
Fire!
Whoa!
Here it is, right here. Right here on me. I can feel it on my hand. Dude, my hand's like freezing.
Oh, crap.
Hold on a second, Porter.
Homicide! Holy crap, dude, I'm nervous right now.
What's this? Somebody in the staircase? Looks like a shadow figure standing back there.
Hey guys, is anyone walking up the staircase?
Huh? Nothing.
I thought I saw some movement in the window.
Out of the corner of my eye?
That's why I was asking if somebody was in there.
Well, like I was saying, what if, like, this... Was that... Whoa!
What was that?
Something's moving on the stairs.
What? Dude. 666 again. Look, something's fixing to happen.
Lost.
Satan.
Satan?
Hey guys, I just got
Satan on the ovulus out here next to me.
Yeah, we heard that from all the way up here, and guess what we got on the temperature gauge on the mill?
666.
That's a big copy.
Maybe get another round ready.
We got homicide.
on the ovulus as soon as you fired that off last time, so I think that's waking them up.
Unholy.
Unholy. Crap. Unholy. We've got 666. Porter got Satan. We got unholy. Great.
It sounds like, man, we're dealing with something that's evil or really freaking angry.
Maybe all the negative events happen causes this negative energy that these demons feed off of, maybe.
Yeah, when there's a lot of bloodshed, when there's a lot of evil taking place, murder, stuff, I mean, that's...
It just harbors itself.
Man, do we maybe want to head to the...
Homicide, shadow on the stairs, 666, Satan, unholy? I guess their little prayer didn't work. Is it murder if you kill an enemy combatant in war? Asking for a friend. Did you notice what happened? Their stupid little box said random words, and instead of saying, that's not relevant to what we're doing, ignore it. They double down and try to rationalize what they heard. But there may be a reason for those words they heard. There could be so much negative energy here that demons feed off it. Give me a break. Just stop with your stupid ass nonsense. They leave the house and head into the barn. Porter loads 2 rounds and lets the blast pop.
What was that? What did we just hear?
A cannon.
Cannon.
A cannon.
Whoa.
Clear as day.
A cannon?
That's what it said, a cannon.
What did we just hear?
You're a little off. It's a rifle, but, I mean, that's close enough.
Yeah.
That pretty much sums up ghost hunting. A little off, but close enough. Clear as day. Did y'all hear it? He or she or something said cannon. Those poor confused ghosts, they don't even know what they're hearing. They're so dumb. They get the chills and Porter comes into the barn. He's told about the cannon EVP. It was wrong, but close enough. But Porter says, hold up, wait a minute.
Earlier today, when I was up there with the guys in the field doing the reenactment stuff, they said that when you double load those muskets and you fire them off like that, it almost sounds like a cannon.
Oh my gosh.
That musket seems to fire up paranormal activity every time I fire it. Whether it's the sound that's so tied to what happened in this place, or it's the energy released, something to do with that combination in a trigger item is really what works the best when we're trying to stir up paranormal activity.
Let's unpack this a little, shall we? First, he was told by reenactors that a double-loaded musket almost sounds like a cannon. The spirit thinks it was a cannon because of the double load, but it was wrong. Almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. I'm not convinced, but the rest of the team sure is. Second, we get some wild speculation about gunshots and paranormal activity. They got 2 EVPs and the stupid voice box talking about devils or Satan or 666. They got more from the militaria than they got from the battlefield. But that kind of proves their point, right? The crew wraps up and heads home. They meet up in an empty parking lot and go over the evidence they collected. They seem pretty convinced that they captured some hard evidence of the paranormal. They again try to convince us that trigger objects are a thing and are the only reason they got any paranormal activity. What about Satan and 666 and Unholy? Well, it's simple. So much death and destruction from the war, evil must be involved, like the evil of rebelling against the United States. They say the bad man is here, which I assume is Satan. So which trigger object gave them the best results? Back to the gunfire.
The trigger objects that we associated with the civilians got the weakest responses, but the physical and audio triggers that were associated with the soldiers, the revolver, the uniform,
K2.
The battle sounds and the musket firing all got amazing results. So it looks like the paranormal activity in this town is primarily brought about by the fallen soldiers of the Battle of Gettysburg. And with all the death and destruction, you can bet there will always be a presence of evil waiting to make itself known.
I think, it's important to remember the Gettysburg soldiers of old. They may be gone, but they've showed us here this weekend that they'll never be forgotten.
You got that right. Well, boys, what do you say we put on our driving goggles and head on the road?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Let's just keep this weather.
Those are some very strong conclusions based on 2 nights worth of investigating. They will have us believe that they conducted a rigorous, controlled scientific experiment and concluded that the civilian trigger objects don't work as well as the military ones, based on that stupid voice box gimmick and a few garbled EVPs. If you're watching this and believe ghosts are real and accept what these guys say as truth, explain to me why I should take them seriously after everything I've just pointed out. They haven't proven to me that they understand the slightest thing about the scientific method or how to conduct a proper investigation or experiment. Until then, these guys are clowns playing pretend, and I don't need a stupid voice box to tell me that. Thank you for listening to Paranormal Skeptic Academy. If you like the work that I do, please leave me a review on iTunes and Stitcher. If you want to support the show financially and receive extra content monthly, you can sign up to be a member starting at $1 a month at patreon.com/PSA or at paranormalskepticacademy.com/membership. Like the Facebook page at facebook.com/Paranormal Skeptic Academy. Follow me on Twitter at cweb619 and subscribe to the YouTube channel at youtube.com/pskepticacademy for full video versions of each episode and YouTube-only bonus content. Also, you can download each member-only episode for $1.50 at paranormalskepticacademy.com under downloads. Thank you for listening and supporting Paranormal Skeptic Academy. Schooling your favorite paranormal investigators.